Chapter 4:12. Establish a Cthulhu Church? Sulen wasn't familiar with this business. What should he do? It wouldn't be easy to make those kobolds, gnomes, or gnolls become believers of the heartless Cthulhu god. In this world, he hadn't joined a church and believed in the gods, so he didn't know much about the gods' method of recruiting believers. Now that he was recruiting believers for the Cthulhu god, he didn't know where to start. Cthulhu Church, isn't that a cult? Sulen clapped his hands and immediately thought of something. Cults existed in his previous life too. Back then, there was a huge scandal. There was also a similar type of pyramid scheme. These cults and pyramid schemes were simply brainwashing. Sulen found 500 gnomes and kobolds and chose one to be the priest of the Heartless Church. Then, he gave him the statue. Sulen didn't have to do anything. In a few days, he would become a believer of the Cthulhu god. My name is Hall, and I'm a kobold. At first, I lived in the wilderness with my companions. Every day, we were busy avoiding enemies and searching for food. Ever since I was born, I've never had a full day. Later, we heard that there was a lot of food near the river, so we came here to survive. As expected, after we came to the river, there was a lot of food growing in the soil. My companions and I felt full for the first time. The feeling of our stomachs being filled was wonderful. But when we were resting, a group of powerful humans rushed over and we became captives. My companions and I were brought to a tall and magnificent city. Every day, we would have to move rocks, dig fields, and do all kinds of work. Every day, we would be exhausted. Although I wasn't used to it at first, I soon felt that this kind of life was actually quite good. Because I didn't have to worry about being hungry every day, and I didn't have to worry about being attacked by wild beasts when I slept at night. I felt that I was really lucky. I thought that I would live like this for the rest of my life, but the following changes changed my life. That day, my companions and I were brought to another place by humans. We didn't have any work, just rest. We didn't have to work, and we even had food. It was so blissful. Right, when I was eating, I found a statue on the side of the road. I don't know who left it there, but since I, Hall, found it, it's mine. On the second day after I picked up the statue, I woke up early in the morning and felt my mind clear up. Last night, I actually had a dream where I became the master of all the kobolds. Every day, all the kobolds would bring me the best food, and the most beautiful kobolds would be free for me to choose from. This feeling was amazing. But what was that mindlessness? Can he give me these things? On the third day, God. I was actually chosen by God. It was incredible. I was actually chosen by God as a believer. As long as I believed in him, I could get everything I wanted. What was there to consider? I was his believer. S God says. How? Sulen looked at the kobold he had chosen. After becoming a believer of the evil god, he was clearly different from ordinary kobolds. The most obvious difference was that this kobold had become smarter, and he had even started to preach to other kobolds. However, it seemed that his preaching wasn't very effective. It seemed that he needed Sulen's help. Sulen hadn't been idle these days. He summarized all the cults and pyramid schemes in his previous life, as well as some ancient religions' methods of recruiting followers, and wrote a guide for preaching. The guide mainly talked about the methods of preaching, brainwashing. The simplest and most effective method of preaching, brainwashing, was pyramid schemes. Speaking of which, Sulen had encountered one in his previous life. One of his cousins had been tricked into one. Other than eating and sleeping, all he did was go to class. He talked about success, hard work, and the future. To put it bluntly, it was nothing more than a pie in the sky. Sulen planned to let the kobold Hall do this. He went to find Hathaway first and told her his plan. Hathaway frowned and hesitated. You're helping the evil god recruit followers. Have you thought about the consequences if you lose control? That evil god of the heartless, can he really come? Su Lin pursed his lips. The evil god wasn't like the other gods. If others knew that he dared to come, a large group of legendary professionals and priests from various churches would rush over. Divinity was a rare resource. An evil god carried a lot of divinity. If he dared to come in person, he would be courting death. Even the gods would send their avatars to snatch it. Su Lin couldn't wait for the evil god to come in person. Even if he doesn't come in person, he can still cause trouble, Hathaway said after hesitating for a while. Su Lin patted his chest and promised, "Don't worry, I'm ready. There won't be any problems." "Okay, what do you want me to do?" Seeing that Su Lin insisted, Hathaway could only agree. "It's very simple. Don't you know suggestion and memory weaving? Give the kobold some knowledge for preaching and let him do what we want," Su Lin said with a smile. The effect of suggestion was similar to hypnotism. It could make people do things according to the spellcaster's requirements unknowingly. Of course, this didn't mean that this spell could be used to do whatever one wanted. Even if there was suggestion, it couldn't make people do things that were too unreasonable. However, after this spell was combined with memory weaving, it wasn't difficult to imbue a kobold with knowledge and memories unknowingly. Moreover, after the memory was imbued, the kobold would only think that he had received a gift from the gods. The gods had given him knowledge, and he wouldn't think that someone had done it on purpose. "Okay, let's do it tonight. I'll cast hypnotism on them later and weave their memories," Hathaway said. Soon, when it was dark, Hathaway and Su Lin went to the camp where the goblins and kobolds were. They cast hypnotism on the kobolds and goblins in the camp. Su Lin found the kobold named Hall, and Hathaway began to cast memory weaving on him. Memory weaving was a very difficult spell to perform. After all, the brain and soul were very delicate. If one wasn't careful, it was easy to turn them into idiots. Fortunately, Su Lin didn't want to impart much knowledge this time. After some effort, Hathaway successfully imbued the knowledge into Hall's memory. Under the effect of suggestion, when the kobold woke up the next day, he would think that he had received a divine revelation at night and that the gods had blessed him with this knowledge. As expected, early the next morning, the kobold Hall announced that he had received a divine revelation as soon as he woke up. He had become the messenger of the gods, and those who believed in him would receive the gods' blessings. Su Lin also asked the guards to cooperate with the kobold Hall and hand the food of the kobolds and goblins to Hall for distribution. With the authority to distribute the food, Hall easily made the kobolds and goblins obey him. Next, Hall began to preach. The mortal world is like a prison, and all living beings suffer. In the void hometown, everyone is equal. There is a god descending from the heavens, Wuxia Patriarch. Followers of the Wuxia Patriarch, as long as you believe in the Wuxia Patriarch, you can eat your fill every day. You don't have to starve or be oppressed by others. You can also enjoy the offerings of others and enjoy the things that only humans can enjoy. Why are we oppressed and enslaved? Are we born like this? No, it's the oppression of others, but we can't resist. Only by believing in the Wuxia Patriarch, the gods will give us power and bring disaster to our enemies. Learning medicine can't save the kobolds and goblins. Only the Wuxia Patriarch can save us. Open your eyes and take a look, we have reached the most dangerous moment. If we don't believe in the Wuxia Patriarch, no one will care about our lives. Comrades, friends, fellow believers, wake up. As long as we unite and believe in the Wuxia Patriarch, nothing in this world can stop us. Are you sure there's nothing wrong with what he said? Hathaway and Su Lin stood not far away and looked at the kobolds and goblins in the camp who were surrounding the kobold in the middle with fanatical expressions. Su Lin glanced at her and said, "I think it's great. Look, those kobolds and goblins have now become believers of that evil god." "That's not what I'm talking about." Hathaway glared at him. I know what you mean. Do you think these kobolds and goblins can succeed if they want to rebel? Sulan said with pursed lips. Judging from their fanaticism, they must have provided a lot of power of faith. In a few days, the evil god will begin to give back to the believers. Be careful, don't let those churches find out. Those churches will never tolerate the evil god. Be careful, they might come after you when the time comes. Hathaway said with pursed lips. Don't worry, everything has been arranged, Sulan said with a nod. That's good. By the way, how long do you think it will take for the evil god to come looking for you? Hathaway asked. I'm not sure about that either. Why don't we wait until it's about time and force him to descend? It's up to you, just remember to inform me when the time comes. Under normal circumstances, the evil god was very vengeful and would usually take revenge. Sulan had killed its church and its clone, and finally took away its divinity, which was a great humiliation for an evil god. After accumulating enough power, he could not wait to send his divine power incarnation to seek revenge on Suluan. You said you helped the evil god establish a church? He won't thank you. Chapter 4:13. The Heartless Church developed quickly. It only took a few days for the kobolds and goblins to become believers of the Heartless. Hall became the leader of these 500 kobolds and goblins, as well as the Pope of the Heartless Church. Hall even became a fanatic believer. Even the other kobolds and goblins had a few devout believers. Of course, most of the kobolds and goblins were shallow believers. However, with Sullen's brainwashing method, Hall only needed some time to cultivate a few devout believers among the 500 kobolds and goblins. Hundreds of devout believers and a few hundred ordinary believers provided a lot of faith power. Moreover, the evil god liked blood sacrifices. If these believers were sacrificed, the evil god would gain a lot of power. Sulan ordered people to keep a close eye on the kobolds and goblins. He didn't pay attention to them for now. With the church, the next step was to develop slowly. When the pigs were fattened up, they could be slaughtered. Right now, the pigs were at most a little piglet. Sulan had spent so much effort, how could he not make a profit? North Town City. This month's white sugar sales had begun again. The managers of more than 20 caravans were all present. Everyone was chatting and laughing in the hall. At this time, a middle-aged man walked in. After seeing this person, all the merchants immediately stood up and surrounded him. Manager Xian, you're here. Please take a seat. Manager Xian, this is the superior divine oil I brought from the Desert Kingdom. It can strengthen your body and cure all diseases. Manager Xian, the group of people fawned over him. Xian waved at them and went to the main seat in the room. He said, you're all old friends. There's no need for these things. Let's discuss the quota for this transaction. Yes. The merchants immediately quieted down and sat obediently in their seats. Xian glanced around. When he saw that everyone was present, he said, due to some technical reasons, the white sugar production this time has decreased compared to last month. Therefore, this month's quota has also decreased. Master Xian, how much did it decrease? We're all counting on the white sugar to make money. That's right, Master Xian. We've lost money this time. We're just waiting for the white sugar to recoup our losses. We can't decrease the quota. As soon as they heard that the amount of white sugar had been reduced, the merchants below instantly went into an uproar. For a moment, the entire room was in an uproar. Quiet. Quiet. Jean shouted loudly, but the merchants were all in a hurry and didn't pay attention to Jean's words. Seeing this situation, Jean frowned slightly and then shouted, whoever makes any more noise will be disqualified from purchasing this month. His share will be divided equally among the remaining people. As soon as he finished speaking, the noisy scene instantly quieted down. All the merchants seemed to have become mute. The whole scene was a little strange. Let me finish. Jean glanced at everyone and continued, this time, the production has decreased. Everyone's share has been reduced to 2/3. Hearing that a third of their share had been reduced, the merchants were in an uproar. However, as Jean's gaze swept over them, they immediately became well-behaved. However, considering that you and our Beifeng Principality are old friends, we naturally won't ignore it. Xian smiled. The Lord has given the order that we can take out some white sugar from our warehouse and sell it at the same price. Only then did the merchants breathe a sigh of relief. However, the rest of the white sugar is not something you can buy as you wish. Jean's words caused the merchants who had just breathed a sigh of relief to worry again. Don't worry, we don't intend to raise the price. However, there is a condition for buying the white sugar. What condition? The merchants didn't let down their guard. It's very simple. If you want to buy the white sugar, you have to first buy another product. Jean took out a beautiful amethyst bottle and then slammed it on the table. Perfume. Perfume? What's that? Hearing Jean's words, the merchants looked at the amethyst bottle with some confusion. This is a new product that we have developed. It's very popular with women. Jean picked up the perfume bottle and opened it. A pleasant floral fragrance filled the air. This is flower dew? One of the merchants asked. This is perfume. The effect is higher than flower dew. The fragrance is stronger and lasts longer, Jean said with a smile. Then, Sir Jean, how much is this perfume? And how much is the share of white sugar after buying the perfume? Another merchant asked. The price of a bottle of perfume is 50 kinnar. You can buy half a kilogram of white sugar. Sir Jean, this price is a little high. 50 kinnar. It's much more expensive than flower dew. One bottle can only buy half a kilogram. That's too little. Hee, this is the Lord's decision. I have no right to change it. If you don't want to buy it, then don't buy it. We can't force you to buy it. We, the northern town city, are honest merchants. We definitely won't force you to buy or sell. Jean said righteously. When the merchants heard Jean's words, they were speechless. What was that saying again? I've never seen such a shameless person before. This time, there are only 2,000 bottles of perfume, so there's only 2,000 kilograms of white sugar. Buy it if you've made up your mind. Sir Jean, I want to buy 200 bottles of perfume and 200 kilograms of white sugar. I want 100 bottles of perfume and 100 kilograms of white sugar. I also want 100 bottles of perfume and 100 kilograms of white sugar. After hearing that there were 2,000 kilograms of white sugar, these people didn't delay any longer. They all shouted that they wanted to buy it. The 2,000 bottles of perfume were sold out. After completing the transaction, Jean excitedly went to report to Sulen. After hearing that the 2,000 bottles of perfume were sold out, Sulen was also very happy. He ordered the factory to start production. Sulen was very confident in the perfume. When the next time came, these people would probably rush to buy it. The construction of the new city had begun. Currently, there were more than 3,000 people living nearby. When the construction of the new city began, some merchants came here to establish a foothold. When Sulen arrived, the entire construction site was in full swing. It was a scene of prosperity. The scale of the new city was directly built to accommodate 50,000 people. Now that the northern town city had enough manpower, they didn't have to build it step by step like before. They could complete it in one go. The new city was built according to the blueprint. The first things to be built were the residential buildings and the city walls. These two buildings would be completed before winter. The construction of the entire city was quite boring. This time, for the construction of the new city, all kinds of materials were prepared. There were a lot of bricks. After this period of development, the brick factory in the northern town city had expanded again. The production had more than doubled. With bricks, the amount of work could be reduced. At least, they didn't have to use soil to build. If this work was done by an ordinary lord, except for the city lord's mansion, the other places would probably use soil. This way, the construction time would be greatly increased. Very few people would use a lot of bricks to build the city walls. As for ordinary houses, they were directly built with soil and wood. Only the rich merchants and nobles would use bricks. Most of the city walls were wrapped with a layer of bricks on the outside and rammed earth on the inside. The strength of this kind of city wall was lower than bricks. However, if the rammed earth city wall was strictly made according to the rules, the city wall's hardness wouldn't be bad. However, very few nobles would do so. Sulan naturally wouldn't skimp on the work. The construction of the city had strict standards. Only a rich person like him would use a lot of bricks. Sulan even planned to use mud to stone to fuse all the bricks into a whole city after these city walls were built. In the royal city of Florence. Since King Henry was seriously ill, the atmosphere in the city had become more and more strange and tense. The most likely to obtain the throne were the eldest prince and the second prince. The two of them controlled nearly 80% of the entire city's forces, and the rest was controlled by various nobles. Less than 10% of the army was controlled by the third prince. At this time, the third prince, Daniel, was listening to his subordinate's report with a gloomy face. "You mean His Majesty has been in a coma for 2 days?" "Yes, the eldest prince and the second prince's men have surrounded the palace and don't allow anyone to get close. We also got some information from several nobles. Go and call the Shadow Walker." The third prince, Daniel, clenched his fist and slammed it on the desk, leaving a deep dent on the hard desk. He hadn't seen the king for more than a month. The eldest prince and the second prince cooperated very tacitly and blocked all the other princes except for them. Daniel knew that they had even made a private decision to imprison or put the others under house arrest before making a move. This was to prevent others from picking the fruits of their labor while the two of them were fighting until the victor was decided. Just outside his mansion, there was always someone watching him. "Sir." A figure shrouded in darkness appeared in the room. "Immediately spread the news that the eldest prince has the support of the wizards. I must let my good second brother know. This way, he will be scared and panic, and it is very likely that he will act first at all costs. As long as they start a war, no matter who wins or loses, they will suffer heavy losses. This is my chance. They already control more than 70% of the power in the city. If we let them continue, we won't even have a chance to survive. Get people ready. Once one side becomes weak, help the other side and weaken their strength as much as possible. My father doesn't have much time left. Only I am qualified to inherit that position." Chapter 4:14. Hurry up, don't think of slacking off. You bunch of lazy bums, you should be grateful. If it wasn't for the Great North Wind Duchy, you would have starved to death in the wilderness. A kobold shouted at the other kobolds and goblins with a whip in his hand. Yes, I'm talking to you. Don't slack off, or I'll cancel your food for today. Also, the kobolds in your group will have their food reduced by half. Hurry up, this section of the wall must be completed before dinner, or else you won't have any food left. The kobolds who were being reprimanded sped up their work when they heard that they wouldn't have any food to eat. Even the kobold who had slacked off earlier did the same. If he completed the task today, he would at least get some leftovers. If he didn't, he would probably be beaten to death by the kobolds in his group. This was not impossible. One had to know that it was normal for 1 or 2 kobolds to die in the wilderness. But don't be so harsh. As long as they can complete 80% of the work, they'll be allowed to eat, a human supervisor beside him said with a smile. You're right, Lord Boar. You're too kind. Your glorious image is a role model for us to follow. No matter how hard we lowly kobolds work, we can't compare to you." Buttface immediately turned into a bootlicker. His flattery made people blush. "If you ask me, we should be stricter towards these kobolds. Otherwise, they won't know how hard it is for them to work. If it wasn't for our North Wind Duchy, these kobolds would have frozen to death when winter came. The North Wind Duchy saved them. I'm guiding them to repay the debt of gratitude." Sulen stood on a high ground and naturally noticed the situation not far away. The practice of using kobolds and goblins as supervisors was from the experience gained during the construction of the North Town. Compared to the humans, these kobold and goblin supervisors were very capable. Compared to the humans, these kobold and goblin supervisors were more demanding. The construction progress was usually 15% to 20% faster. Of course, there was another advantage. This practice placed the humans in the position of arbitrators. The ones oppressing the kobolds and goblins were their own supervisors and had nothing to do with the humans. If the supervisors were too oppressive, the humans could remove the supervisor and slightly improve the treatment of the kobolds and goblins. Then, they would continue to be oppressed and exploited. From the North Town to now, the humans were very familiar with this process. "Your Excellency! Your Excellency!" A young man dressed as a messenger shouted and rushed to the construction site. "Stop!" Just when he was 10 meters away from Suluan, 2 soldiers of the formation breaker stopped him. "I have urgent news for you, Your Excellency." After the messengers of the messenger was, the messenger's messenger, and the seal and the wax on it was undamaged. Only then did the messengers of Suvs pass. Of Suvs the messenger. Of the seal and wax of Teet. Est of T. Teet, S ask. Got it. Sulen turned and left the construction site with his men. He left a few people to pack up. The others followed Sulen back to the North Town. The letter didn't say too much. It only told Sulen that something had happened in the Florentine S, and asked him to go back as soon as possible. Although the letter didn't explain exactly what had happened, Sulen had some guesses in his heart. The King of Florence was not young. When Sulen was still in the south, he had heard that the king's health was not very good. Now that he was told that something had happened in this, wasn't the reason obvious? Could it be that the king knew he was about to pass away, and for the sake of a smooth transition of power, he deliberately asked Sulen to support him? Sulen pondered in his heart as he rode to the North Town. It was already afternoon when he arrived at the North Town. Sulen rushed all the way back. After entering the city, he went straight to the palace without delay. Phyllis had been waiting anxiously in the palace for a long time. When she saw Sulen coming back, she immediately threw herself into Sulen's arms. She couldn't hold back the tears in her eyes anymore. "Sulen, my father is seriously ill and in a coma." "Phyllis, don't worry too much. There are several bishops and pastors in the capital. They will help." Sulen comforted Phyllis as he patted her on the back. In fact, even Suluan himself didn't believe it. Although priests could heal injuries, they didn't have a good way to deal with birth, old age, illness, and death. King Henry's life should be coming to an end, and magic would basically be useless unless the gods intervened. Or rare treasures such as the Fountain of Youth or the Fountain of Life appeared. Otherwise, he could only die bit by bit. "Sulen, I want to go back and see my father and mother. Can you come with me?" Phyllis raised her head and said with tears in her eyes. "It's okay. I'm here. We will go to the capital as soon as possible." Sulen reached out and wiped away Phyllis's tears. "Okay, thank you." Because they needed to go to the capital as soon as possible, Sulen and Phyllis didn't bring too many people. There were barbarian guards, spear guards, and human and half-elf archers. There were a total of 200 people. This time, only Sulen and Phyllis went with them. Hathaway and Chris stayed in the North Town to take care of all kinds of things. Originally, Sulen planned to use the teleportation circle to go directly. However, he didn't have the coordinates of the capital of Florence. If he used the teleportation circle forcefully, there would be a big error. Therefore, he had to bring many guards with him on horseback. It would take less than 20 days to go from the North Town to the capital of Florence. They didn't bring much supplies, and each of them rode 2 horses. Of course, they were fast. It took Phyllis more than a month to go from the capital to the North Town. Of course, if Sulen and Phyllis rode the Pegasus directly, it would probably take them 1 or 2 days to get there. After arranging things in the North Wind Duchy, Sulen set off with Phyllis. The 200 soldiers followed them and left the North Town. It wasn't difficult for Sulen and the soldiers in the North Town to travel by force. With their physical fitness, they could still endure it. Sulen was a little worried about Phyllis. Perhaps it was because she had awakened the bloodline of the Red Dragon. Although the journey was very tiring, she still persevered. Just as Sulen and the others were moving toward the capital of Florence, Marquis Savoy, who was far away in Cult, also received the news that King Henry was seriously ill. He knew more than Sulen. As someone who also had the right to inherit the kingdom and wanted to replace the Henry family as the new royal family, Marquis Savoy paid more attention to the capital than anything else. Not only did he know that King Henry was seriously ill, but he also knew that the 2 princes were rubbing their hands together and preparing to kill each other. Henry is finally going to die. God is blessing the Savoy family. Marquis Savoy happily walked back and forth in the study. His excitement was indescribable. He took a few steps to the wine cabinet next to him, took down a bottle of precious Helen wine, and poured himself a glass. The bright red wine emitted a rich wine aroma. Savoy smelled it a little intoxicated. He then took a sip and lay down comfortably on the sofa next to him. This old fox must be regretting it to death. Savoy chuckled. You were able to get Duke Northwind to support you last time. What can you do now that your 2 sons are fighting each other? When both sides are injured, it will be the time for the Savoy family to rise. I really have to thank Duke Northwind. His potion made me a dozen years younger and made me a legend. Chaos, chaos. I will clean up the mess when the time comes. That will be the day when the Savoy family replaces the Henry family as the new royal family of the kingdom. Knock, knock, knock. A series of knocks on the door interrupted Marquis Savoy's reverie. Come in, Marquis Savoy said in a good mood. Father, the army has gathered and is on standby, Vader said respectfully. You've done well. This is the best opportunity for the House of Savoy. Once we move into the capital and replace the Henry family, you will be the first heir of the Kingdom of Florence. The Marquis of Savoy said excitedly. Vader was also very excited when he heard his father's words. With his father's words, he didn't have to worry about his brothers fighting for the throne. However, he couldn't let his guard down. It would be best if he could find an opportunity to send his brothers away. Only then would he be absolutely safe. However, Vader didn't realize that his father, Marquis Savoy, had successfully become a legendary warrior. According to the lifespan of a legendary master, although a warrior's lifespan wasn't as long as a spellcaster's, it was still 200 years. In other words, as long as he wasn't killed, he could sit on the throne for 150 years. As the heir of the Marquis of Savoy, Vader could only wait patiently for 150 years. No, he couldn't wait that long. Vader was just a warrior. He might not even be able to endure 50 years, let alone 150 years. How could there be a crown prince who could live for 150 years? In a world of 150 years, Vader's grandson's grandson would be 40 years old by then, and Vader would only be a pile of bones. In his excitement, Vader didn't realize that even if the Savoy family replaced the Henry family as the royal family, he would never be able to become king. Chapter 4:15. Father, what do you plan to do with the Duke of Northwind? Vader asked softly. When I attended the founding ceremony of the Northwind Duchy, the Duke of Northwind was not only a legendary knight, but he also had a legendary witch as his partner. No one could ignore a powerful legendary wizard, not to mention that Hathaway had a wizard tower. Sulan did not deliberately hide information about Hathaway, so after the founding of the Northwind Duchy, information about Hathaway had already spread. She was a legendary wizard, and a witch at that. There weren't many wizards in the first place, and even fewer legendary witches. Many wizards believed that the children of wizards and wizards had a higher chance of becoming a wizard. Although there was no direct evidence for this, if the parents were wizards, the chances of the children having the potential to become a wizard were very high. Among the wizards, the number of witches had always been lower than the number of wizards. Therefore, the requirements for a witch to choose a spouse were relatively high. Moreover, a legendary witch's lifespan was relatively long, far longer than any close combat profession. Therefore, a legendary witch's requirements for choosing a spouse were even higher. Those who were not strong enough would not even be considered. There was a very real problem. When she was still in her prime, her spouse would become old. This was a situation that not many people would accept. As a legendary warrior, Sulan was able to have a legendary witch as his partner. This was very rare in the entire continent. The Duke of Northwind's rise is too fast. Savoy shook his head helplessly. He originally thought that he had the confidence to become the new ruler of the Kingdom of Florence after becoming a legendary, but now it seemed that he still needed the support of the Duke of Northwind. How much do you know about the Duke of Northwind's preferences? Father, according to the information I've gathered, the Duke of Northwind likes beautiful women. His duchesses are all great beauties. Vader said. Apart from that, the Marquis also has a great need for people. Ever since he opened up his territory, he has never stopped migrating. I think if we help him migrate, the Marquis will definitely be moved. With my sister Sandy, even if we can't pull the Duke of Northwind to our side, we can at least keep him neutral. That's a good idea. Marquis Savoy nodded. Then let's do it according to your plan. We can help him immigrate 100,000 people. 100,000 people is nothing compared to the total population of the Kingdom of Florence, especially in the south. Many nobles have a lot of refugees in their territories. These refugees are unstable factors. When we send them all to the North Wind Kingdom, those nobles will definitely welcome us to help them solve the hidden dangers in their territories. Yes, Father. Vader nodded. In a magnificent mansion in the royal city of Florence. What did you say? A man in luxurious clothes with a cold face listened to his subordinate's report. You're saying my brother has the support of a high-grade magus? How was this possible? Aren't wizards supposed to be neutral? Didn't they not participate in the change of royal authority in the secular world? Why would he support my brother? Could it be that they've changed? Damn it! What benefits did my brother promise those adepts to make them make an exception and support him? I knew it. I shouldn't have reached a tacit agreement with him. I had to seize the opportunity to finish him off from the very beginning. No. I can't just sit there and wait for death. I have to make a move in advance. This good brother of mine is really scheming. He used a set of words to temporarily stabilize me, and let me wait for Father to return to the kingdom of heaven. When that time comes, he can directly ascend to the throne with the support of the Magi. He can sit on the throne without spending a single soldier, and I can only be like a stray dog, chased back to my territory. Immediately send someone to contact the Duke of Northwind. I have to get his support. Otherwise, I have no chance at all. Doesn't he want to migrate? When I ascend to the throne, I'll give him 100,000 migrants. Oh right, there's also my mother and sister. I heard that my sister is very favored by the Duke of Northwind. I can ask her for help. And my mother, Phyllis listens to her mother the most. I can ask her for help. Immediately send someone to prepare a carriage. I want to go to the palace to see my mother. Hearing his words, a middle-aged man beside him slowly said, Your Highness, it's not that we don't have a chance now. As you said, the eldest prince still doesn't know that we already know that he has the support of the Magus. The eldest prince should still be waiting for his majesty to return to the kingdom of heaven before making a move. We can make a move before that and catch him off guard. As long as the plan is good, there's still a chance to kill the eldest prince. As long as we succeed in killing the eldest prince, the throne will naturally be yours, Your Highness. Of course, you still have to contact the Duke of Northwind. As long as the Duke of Northwind recognizes you after you ascend to the throne, then it can be said that there's no chance of failure. Let's go and prepare first. I'll go to the palace to see my mother and ask her for help. Now that my brother has the support of the Magus, there's no chance of a direct confrontation. I can't let go of this chance. Sulan didn't know that he was now in high demand, and several families wanted his support. He was now rushing towards the kingdom of Florence with a group of people. The road from the northern city to the Blackstone fortress was very normal. Although there were no roads, there were still many bandits and monsters in the wilderness. However, as soon as they saw the flag of the northern city and the 200 soldiers, they quickly ran away. They were afraid that they would be killed by the soldiers of the northern city. The journey, which was more than half a month long, was very boring. Sulan had no choice but to focus on learning spells. Then, he would camp at night and explore the origin of life with Phyllis. Since he still had to hurry, he would only try it once every time, just in case Phyllis couldn't make it the next day. Now that he had the abilities of erudite and encyclopedic knowledge, his learning speed was very fast. He was now supplementing all kinds of wizard knowledge. After continuous learning, his knowledge was no worse than that of the orthodox wizards who had been learning wizard knowledge since young. Sulan's wizard ability had been steadily improving. Now, his spellcasting ability had reached the level of an advanced wizard. The only problem was that he needed to master the spell models bit by bit. Of course, he could also use skill points, but it was not easy to get them now. He planned to save them for when he encountered a particularly difficult spell. On the way to the kingdom of Florence, Sulan rarely entered the city. Other than resupplying some food and other supplies, most of the time, he just directly camped outside the city. This led to a problem. Whether it was the second prince or the Marquis of Savoy, the messengers they sent did not meet Sulan. The road conditions in this era were very bad. Many of the wilderness had no roads at all. Sulan just followed the directions of the strategic map and took shortcuts most of the time. Therefore, he inadvertently missed the messengers. Dusk fell. The mansion of the second prince was brightly lit. Teams of fully armed soldiers were patrolling. The servants who came and went looked nervous because the second prince accidentally killed a maid in a rage today. The dead maid was dragged to the garden and buried, but the oppressive atmosphere still shrouded the luxurious mansion. In the dark corner near the garden, soldiers with bows and arrows were lurking. Since yesterday, the entire mansion was shrouded in the atmosphere of a storm. The second prince did not go out for an entire day, but he constantly sent out servants to gather information. In the study room, the second prince's face was gloomy under the dim candlelight. He looked to the side and said in a hoarse voice, "Still no news from the Duke of Northwind?" "Yes, Your Highness." A young knight with a tall and straight figure replied. 2 days. Ever since he learned that his brother had the support of wizards, he became very nervous. As time went by, the situation would become more and more unfavorable for him. Although his mother promised to help him persuade his sister, she only agreed to let the Duke of Northwind remain neutral. This was not what he wanted. Now, many nobles were gradually leaning towards his brother, which was a dangerous sign for him. If he waited any longer, the power gap between him and his brother would become bigger and bigger. The second prince, Sean, closed his eyes tightly. He seemed to be resting, but his hands were beating rhythmically on the table. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyes. A terrifying light flashed in his eyes. I can't wait any longer. I have to start. Sean finally made up his mind. Tell Lucian to start the plan immediately. Yes, Your Highness. The young knight immediately turned around and left the room to pass on the order. Soon, the troops that had been prepared began to move slowly. Several figures moved and directly blended into the darkness. Night fell. Only the noble district in the city had some light. The brightest light was in the palace, followed by the eldest prince's mansion. At this time, the eldest prince was happily listening to the report of his men. You said my good brother went to see my mother? What did he say to my mother? Your Highness, the second prince went to the queen to ask Her Highness to help him. He wanted Princess Phyllis to persuade the Duke of Northwind to support him, a man who was dressed like a chamberlain said. What did my mother say? The eldest prince frowned. Her Highness did not agree. She only said that she would persuade the Duke of Northwind to remain neutral. As long as he remains neutral. My good brother is so calculating. Unfortunately, you will lose this time. At this time, the house suddenly shook violently. The guards and attendants outside screamed. Earthquake? The eldest prince's face changed. Without saying anything, he directly jumped out of the window on the second floor. The house was still shaking violently, but the range was limited to the main house. As soon as he landed, he felt that something was wrong. The ground did not shake at all. Chapter 4:16. Something's not right. The moment Cecil landed on the ground, he felt that something was wrong. The surrounding houses did not shake at all. Only the house he was in had collapsed. With a dull thud, the house in front of him collapsed into a pile of rubble. In the darkness, a pair of eyes locked onto Cecil's figure. Before the surrounding guards could rush over, a cold sword light suddenly flashed in the darkness. Backstab. A cold light flashed and instantly pierced toward Cecil's back. The sharp blade flashed with a cold blue light in the dark night. With a single glance, one could tell that it was smeared with poison. Just as the blade was about to pierce Cecil, there was a flash of light. Immediately after, the surroundings became extremely cold. It was as if the temperature of the air had dropped by more than 10 degrees. A shield of ice suddenly appeared around Cecil's body. Clang! With a light sound, ice shards flew everywhere. The cold air quickly spread along the blade, and in an instant, a layer of frost appeared on the arm holding the dagger. Cecil, who was preparing to continue his attack, stiffened slightly. Ice shield! Cecil's figure flashed, and he immediately put some distance between them. In that moment of crisis, with his reaction speed, he was unable to dodge in time. Fortunately, he had a magical item on him for protection. At the critical moment, he summoned 3 ice shields to protect his body. Otherwise, even if he did not die, he would have at least suffered a layer of skin. Assassin! Protect His Highness! Assassin! A series of alarmed cries sounded, and the surrounding guards quickly rushed over. Quick, kill him! The assassin did not give up. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he shouted in a low voice. A few cloaked figures rushed forward, cold light flashing from their blades as they slashed toward Cecil's body. Cleave! Revolving strike! Cecil's expression changed, and he immediately drew his sword to meet them. At this moment, fleeing would only lead to a faster death. Clang! 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 The sound of metal colliding rang out continuously. Under the attacks of these people, Cecil was continuously forced back. Fortunately, the 3 ice shields around him continuously blocked the attacks, so he was not injured. Over here. Kill these assassins. From the collapse of the loft to the attack of the assassins, less than 2 minutes had passed. The surrounding guards rushed over one after another. When they saw the besieged His Highness, these guards did not hesitate at all. They brandished their weapons and rushed over. Go! When they saw the large number of guards rushing over, they knew that they had lost the chance to kill Cecil. They turned around and fled. You want to run? You dare to commit murder right under my nose? You're looking down on me. Mass slow. Arcane missile. 5" At this moment, a man in a sorcerer's robe let out a cold snort, and beams of spiritual light flashed one after another. A spiritual light quickly spread out in the darkness. The fleeing assassins only felt as if their bodies had sunk into a quagmire in an instant, their running speed greatly reduced. At the same time, a dozen arcane missiles flew towards them from the darkness. These arcane missiles emitted a faint magic light and were very fast. In just an instant, the arcane missiles hit these assassins. Although the arcane missile was not a high-level spell, its power was still very strong. The power of these arcane missiles was slightly inferior to the power of pistol bullets. The moment they hit the target, they broke the arm of one of the assassins. Following the attack of a dozen arcane missiles, several assassins wanted to dodge, but their bodies were shrouded by the slow spell. They could only watch as the arcane missiles hit them one after another. Bang, bang, bang. The arcane missiles hit them one after another, and their bodies were blown away like sandbags under the attack of the missile force field. The attack of the rogues was powerful, but the defense of their bodies was really mediocre. After being swept by many egg-sized arcane missiles, their bodies were fractured all over, and their internal organs were injured by these missiles. Before they could struggle to stand up, the guards had already rushed up and were about to kill these assassins. Keep them alive. A middle-aged man who looked like a general stopped the guards' actions. The guards stepped forward and restrained the assassins. Your Highness, the 3 assassins have been caught. What do you think we should do with them? The middle-aged man came to His Highness the Prince and asked. Cecil had regained his elegant demeanor and looked coldly at the 3 assassins. Take them to the dungeon and interrogate them. I want to know who the mastermind behind this is. Yes. The middle-aged general nodded and ordered the 3 assassins to be taken away. After seeing the others leave, Cecil walked to another room with a gloomy expression. Immediately send someone to investigate who was on guard duty tonight. They actually allowed those 3 assassins to sneak up on me. How did they get in? Yes, Your Highness. I'll arrange for someone to search right away. The attendant next to him said. Wait, what's my dear brother doing now? Cecil suddenly asked. I'm sorry, Your Highness. Omar has been keeping an eye on this matter. I don't know. Go and call Omar here. Yes. However, just as the attendant was about to leave, a guard hurried in. Your Highness, bad news. I've just received news that the barracks outside the city have just been attacked. Please support us. What? Cecil stood up instantly, and the chair behind him fell back with his movement. What is James doing? What is he doing? Didn't I tell him to be on guard? Cecil said angrily. What's the situation with the army now? Facing the angry His Highness the Crown Prince, the attendant's expression was slightly awkward. Sir James did not return to the barracks today. Did not return to the barracks? Where did he go? Cecil was slightly stunned. Then, as if he had thought of something, his expression became even angrier. Did he go to the women's brothel again? Yes. Yes, Your Highness. Find him immediately and let him return to lead the army. Cecil took a deep breath and forcibly suppressed his anger. Following the assassination of the Crown Prince Cecil, the second Prince Sean launched his forces to launch an attack. For a moment, the forces that belonged to the Crown Prince were attacked. Even if they did not succeed in killing the Crown Prince, as long as the army in his hands was destroyed, it would be acceptable. Without the support of the army, even if he had the support of the wizards, he would not be able to sit on the throne. When that time came, it would be up to him. If his stupid brother could get the support of the wizards, there was no reason why he could not. In another corner of the royal city, the third Prince Daniel stood on the upper floor and quietly looked into the distance. At this moment, a graceful figure appeared behind him, and a soft and boneless arm wrapped around his neck like a snake. "My little cutie, are you satisfied with my arrangements?" A delicate face appeared on his shoulder. It was the Pleasure Devil. The Pleasure Devil stuck out her tongue and gently licked his earlobe. Then, she blew a breath. Daniel's body trembled slightly, and his breathing became more rapid. Forcibly diverting his attention, Daniel took a deep breath and said, "Control your strength. Let them fight until both sides are injured. Don't let either side gain the upper hand. Then, I will clean up the mess. Don't worry, when have I ever let you down?" The Pleasure Devil smiled slightly, and then rubbed her body against his. "It's so late. Little cutie, we should rest." As she spoke, she pulled Daniel into the room. Ever since the second prince launched his attack, the entire royal city had inevitably fallen into chaos. Although the second prince Sean had the upper hand in the beginning, and for a time, the crown prince's army was in a mess. Just as the second prince's army was about to completely wipe out the crown prince's army in one go, their camp suddenly caught fire. James, who had just climbed out of his bed, led a few hundred cavalrymen to attack the crown prince's army from behind. He even led his men to stab the crown prince's anus. Although they had just won the battle, the second prince's army was also very tired. Moreover, during the pursuit, the army had long lost its formation. After being attacked by hundreds of cavalrymen from behind, the army almost collapsed directly. The opportunity to wipe out the enemy in one go was gone. By the time they recovered, the Crown Prince's army had also recovered from the blow of defeat. At this point, the two sides could only fight force with force. When Su Luan took Phyllis and 200 troops of Beifeng Principality to Yunwu City, a battle had just ended around Yunwu City. What's going on? Why is there an army fighting in Royal City? Has the enemy already reached here? Seeing the scene in front of him, Su Len was a little puzzled. No, these people are the army of the Kingdom of Florence. After taking a closer look at the battlefield, Su Len was even more puzzled. Su Len asked people to catch two soldiers back and ask them. Finally, he figured out that the Crown Prince and the second prince were fighting for the throne. Before Su Len arrived, the two had been fighting for a while. Because of the war, the originally prosperous royal city had become dilapidated. There were scattered soldiers everywhere. It was obvious that the two sides could no longer control the development of the situation. Where is Cecil now? After understanding the situation, Phyllis asked with a gloomy face. I don't know. I heard that he was killed by the second prince. A soldier said. What? Phyllis's face changed. What about Sean? He's there. I don't know. The two soldiers shook their heads. What about my father? How is His Majesty? I don't know. Don't worry about them. Let's go into the city first and restore order in the city. Su Len looked at the chaotic city in front of him and frowned. Okay. Let's go into the city first. I'll go to the palace to see my father. Phyllis had a bad feeling in her heart. Everyone, get ready for battle. At Sullen's order, the army of Beifeng Duchy immediately quieted down. A murderous aura spread from the army of only 200 people. Chapter 4:17. Sir, are we really going to attack? A formation breaker guard stood beside Su Len and asked. Attack. If they resist, kill all those who resist. Su Len said coldly. Yes. The formation breaker guard immediately turned around and began to reorganize his army. Although Su Len only brought 200 people this time, he was still confident that he could flatten all the troops here. The average strength of the troops he brought this time was at the 3rd grade. It could be said that no other country's army would be so extravagant. In the armies of other countries, 3rd grade professionals were usually middle to high-level generals. The Northern Citadel already had a powerful army with an average of 3rd grade professionals. These people were all elites who had followed him all the way through countless battles, big and small. Against the army of Florence, it could be said that they were completely flattened. The gate of the Northern Citadel was right in front of them. The army of the Northern Wind Principality was all riding horses. They were very fast and only took a few minutes to push near the gate. The sudden approach of the army made the defenders of the city panic. At this time, 2 barbarian warriors quickly rushed toward the gate. The 2 barbarians ran while roaring at the sky. At this time, something happened that shocked the defenders. The 2 barbarians' originally tall and strong bodies were like balloons. They swelled up again and turned into 2 small giants in the blink of an eye. Seeing the 2 barbarians turn into giants, the defenders' faces changed greatly. They immediately wanted to attack, but it was too late. The 2 barbarians rushed to the gate in a few steps and then jumped up from the left and right. The giant axes in their hands instantly cut off the chains of the drawbridge. Boom! The heavy drawbridge fell with a loud bang. The 2 barbarians didn't stop at all. They waved their giant axes and rushed toward the gate. Rumble! There was a violent collision sound. Accompanied by the violent shaking of the gate, a large amount of sand and stone fell from the top of the gate. After the barbarians activated God's descent, their strength had increased to around 40 points. Combined with their size and berserk, they were simply 2 demolition machines. The 2 barbarians hammered at the city gate, and the city walls of Florence couldn't withstand a few hits. With a loud bang, the heavy gate was violently smashed open by the 2 barbarians. Seeing the city gate open, the soldiers of the Duchy of North Wind immediately began to charge. Occupy the city gate. Su Len took the lead and rushed into the city. The soldiers guarding the city were scared out of their wits when they saw the 2 barbarians easily smash the city gate open. They turned around and fled into the city. The city gate was easily occupied by Su Len. Su Len's cold eyes scanned the surroundings. Seeing that there were no other troops around, he ordered, after entering the city, "Do not kill prisoners, do not attack civilians, do not rob property, do not rape women. Anyone who dares to disobey will be killed without mercy. Cain. Your subordinate is here." A guard of the capture barracks stepped forward and responded. "Lead a group of men to protect Phyllis and follow her instructions to the palace." "Understood." Hansen. Your subordinate is here. Take some men and set up a defensive line here. Guard the city gate. Yes, sir. The rest of you, follow me into the city. As the order was given, the army of the Northern Citadel immediately set off. The royal city of Florence had fallen into chaos at this time. The continuous days of war had turned the outer city into a mess. There were defeated soldiers everywhere. After these defeated soldiers lost control, they burned, killed, and looted. The entire city was out of control. Seeing this situation, Su Len did not hesitate at all and immediately ordered an attack. How could these scattered soldiers be a match for the army of the Duchy of North Wind? They were killed as soon as they came into contact. The rest of the soldiers were so scared that they turned around and fled. However, how could those with 2 legs outrun those with 4 legs? The soldiers of the Duchy of North Wind chased after these scattered soldiers and killed them. Then, Su Len pushed forward and killed all the scattered soldiers in his path. In less than an hour, Su Len had taken control of a quarter of the city. Just as Su Len was clearing out the rebels in the city, the nobles finally reacted. Soon, an army of nobles' private guards was assembled. After this army was assembled, they came to the outer city. "Who are you?" A noble who was mostly a knight shouted loudly. "My lord is the master of the Duchy of North Wind, Duke Sulen of North Wind." A barbarian next to him answered under Sullen's signal. After hearing the barbarian's voice, there was a slight commotion in the army opposite. Sullen's name was very famous in the kingdom of Florence. "Where are Cecil and Sean? Let them out." Sulen stepped forward and shouted loudly. "I'm sorry, Sir Sulen. My 2 brothers have died in the previous battle." A young noble walked out and said, "I'm Daniel, the 3rd son of His Majesty the King. Not long ago, my 2 brothers fought for the right to inherit the throne. In the end, both of them died in battle. We were discussing how to deal with the aftermath. We didn't expect the Duke to come. On behalf of the nobles of Florence, I welcome your arrival." Sulen looked at the young noble in front of him. The other party was handsome, only slightly inferior to himself. He had a strong body, wore a gorgeous silk robe, and had a long sword at his waist. There was a faint evil aura around him. The aura was similar to the little succubus Chris's, but there was a big difference. However, Sulen could be sure that the aura came from the lower planes. Things did not seem to be as simple as he had imagined. Even if Prince Daniel was not a fallen one, he had a deep connection with the lower planes. Things were getting interesting. 2 powerful elder brothers fought for the throne and fought to the death. In the end, when the victor was about to be decided, they were both killed by the 3rd brother. If Sulen hadn't come so quickly, maybe the 3rd prince would have been enthroned as the new king of Florence. "Sir Sulen, you must be here to observe the ceremony. I would like to ask you to restrain the soldiers. This matter is the internal affairs of the Kingdom of Florence. As the Duke of the Duchy of North Wind, I would like to ask you to leave for a while," Daniel said to Sulen. "Internal affairs? My wife is the daughter of the King of Florence, the princess of the Kingdom of Florence. Naturally, she is qualified to participate in the internal affairs of the Kingdom of Florence." Sulen smiled slightly, and said, "Moreover, I feel that a fallen one like you should stay away from here." "Fallen one? What's going on?" The surrounding nobles were discussing. Daniel's face changed, and he immediately scolded, "Nonsense. I am now the first heir of the Kingdom of Florence. You are slandering me, blatant slandering. You know best whether it is true or not." Sulen sneered, and said, "You were the one who started the war between Cecil and Sean, right? Demons preferred simple and crude places, and rarely used schemes and tricks. Now that the palace had become like this, Sulen immediately thought of the devils, who were also creatures of the lower planes. Compared to the simple and crude demons, the devils preferred to play with schemes and tricks. They liked to completely destroy the hopes of those people when they were about to succeed, and then pluck the souls that had been tempered like ripe fruits. Everything in front of him was probably the devil's masterpiece. "Scout the camp." A spiritual light shot out from Sulen's body, and instantly hit Daniel, who was not far away. The next second, a blood-red spiritual light suddenly rose from Daniel's body. When the surrounding nobles saw it, their faces changed greatly, and they all stepped back. In the blink of an eye, there was a large empty space around Daniel. These nobles naturally knew what that red aura represented. Although many nobles used detection spells to test the aura and found that it was biased towards evil, judging from the situation just now, such a dazzling red aura was very likely to be a fallen one. Fallen ones were the people who had signed a contract with creatures of the lower planes, such as demons, devils, and other monsters, and obtained their power. Every time a fallen one appeared, it would cause very serious consequences. Now, the first heir of the Florentine royal family was actually a fallen one. If this spread out, it would definitely be a big scandal. I didn't expect to be discovered. At this moment, a frivolous voice suddenly appeared, and entered everyone's ears. I originally planned to harvest slowly, but now it seems that I have to speed up. You sneaky bastard. Now that I'm here, do you really think you'll succeed? Su Luan laughed coldly. With a flip of his hand, a glazed palace lantern appeared. Break invisibility. A spiritual light flashed from the glazed glass palace lantern. As the spiritual light swept past, a figure that stood out from the rest suddenly appeared among the nobles. She had a tall and slim figure and a curvaceous body. She had long, black hair and an enchanting face. She gave off an incredibly seductive aura. This was the pleasure demon from Bator Hell. How dare you show off your insignificant skill before an expert? Sulen put away the sky lantern and rushed toward the pleasure demon in a flash. Dimensional anchor. As Sulen raised his hand, a spiritual light shot out. In an instant, the surrounding space was separated by a spell, directly sealing the teleportation spell in this area. No one could use teleportation or blink skills. Forbidden magic field. Then, an invisible energy field instantly appeared in Sullen's hand, and directly turned the area around the pleasure demon into a dead magic field, directly crippling the pleasure demon's magic ability. Lightning spear. Dazzling lightning flashed, and in the next second, a lightning spear was formed in Sullen's hand. This lightning spear contained great power, and he directly threw it at the pleasure demon. Chapter 4:18. Pleasure Devils. They were the lords of the sixth layer of the Hell of Bator, the subjects of Glacia. They were different from ordinary devils with ugly appearances. Pleasure devils were extremely beautiful, similar to the succubi of hell. However, they had the bloodline of fallen angels. Their lord, Glacia, was the daughter of Asmodeus, the lord of the Hell of Bator. Compared to other devils, pleasure devils preferred to use seduction to get their enemies to willingly fall into their embrace. Once they reached their target, Glacia would use diseases and toxins to corrode their enemies' bodies and abandon their skeletons in the swamps. The lord of the sixth layer of the Hell of Bator, the Hag Countess, had been killed by her. She even used her corpse to decorate her palace. Compared to other devils, pleasure devils were more stealthy and dangerous. They were one of the few devils that could escape the detection of priests. This pleasure devil didn't descend with her true body. Instead, she used a projection ability to project a portion of her soul force and devil power into the material plane, forming a method similar to the incarnation of a god. Sulen was now a high-ranked legend, and because he had divinity in his body, his attacks carried some characteristics of divine power. Dazzling lightning flashed, and it was as if a sun had suddenly risen in the sky. The eyes of the surrounding nobles were directly pierced by the bright light, and they quickly covered their eyes. The dazzling lightning flashed, and in the next second, it flew towards the pleasure devil. Damn it! Seeing the dazzling lightning, the pleasure devil felt a strong sense of danger, and her expression changed drastically. A wave of evil energy instantly erupted from her body. The nobles near her were enveloped by this evil energy, and their bodies visibly weakened and aged. These nobles who had long been hollowed out by wine and women couldn't resist this evil light at all, and a large number of them died in an instant. Their souls were directly absorbed by the evil light into the pleasure devil's body, and the evil light on her body instantly rose sharply. Rumble. The lightning spear struck the evil aura in front of the pleasure devil, and the lightning and evil light violently exploded. Accompanied by the explosion, a figure flashed and instantly flew into the distance. Trying to run? Too late. A cold glint flashed in Sullen's eyes. He moved and appeared beside the pleasure demon. Since you're here, you don't have to leave. If this had been the infernal plane and the pleasure demon was in her true form, she would have had a chance to escape. But now that she was in the prime material plane, all creatures from the lower planes were suppressed here. Moreover, she was only a soul projection. It would be strange if she could escape. Not good. The pleasure devil felt goosebumps all over her body. She never thought that as a warrior, Sulan would be able to use flash so skillfully. Bang! The storm battle halberd appeared in Sulan's hand. Dazzling lightning appeared on the halberd. As soon as it appeared, he began to attack the pleasure devil. His 50 points of strength was displayed in an instant. The pleasure devil's body that was trying to escape was violently smashed to the ground. Boom! The pleasure devil's body was like a cannonball as it pierced through a 3-story building and crashed heavily onto the ground. If it weren't for the demon's strong physique, she would have lost half her life. Cough! Cough! The pleasure devil's body was severely injured. An evil aura exploded from her body. This evil aura seemed to be a signal for something. Evil aura rose from the bodies of the nobles in the distance. Soul harvest. The evil aura disappeared in a flash. In the next second, many of the nobles began to age rapidly. In just an instant, a young and strong noble turned into an old man with a head full of white hair. It was as if all the life force in their bodies had been sucked away in an instant. Then, souls flew out of their bodies and merged into the pleasure devil's body. Her body was quickly repaired. The pleasure devil's aura that was originally weak was quickly strengthened. Her injuries were also healed in the blink of an eye. Regarding the pleasure demon's actions, Su Luan didn't do anything. He didn't care about those nobles at all. If they died, then so be it. She just helped him clear the way. Su Luan even wanted to give her a medal. After becoming stronger, the pleasure devil did not act rashly. She did not think that she could defeat Sulan. She glared fiercely at him and said hatefully, "I'll remember you. One day, I'll come back for revenge." Surin's arrival had completely disrupted her plans. After all, it hadn't been easy for the Iranese Queen Glasia to send her to the material plane. She'd paid a hefty price to do so. Her plan had been to sacrifice the entire city to the queen, harvest all the souls, and then return to Bator with her bountiful spoils. But now, her plan was completely ruined. Even she had to flee back to Bator in a sorry state. What? You still want to live for another chapter? Dazzling lightning flashed as the storm war halberd pierced towards the pleasure devil. The space around the pleasure devil was locked down. She could only brace herself and prepare to attack. Lightning hell. Lightning spear. Lightning strike. A powerful energy burst out from Su Luan's body in an instant and directly shrouded the pleasure devil. Then, Su Luan's storm-like attacks instantly broke out. The pleasure devil was not good at frontal combat. Under Su Luan's attacks, it could only parry and evade. Although she was also a legend, the gap between her and Sulan was huge. The souls she had just absorbed had greatly increased her strength, but it was only delaying her defeat. Ah! A bolt of lightning as thick as a bucket struck the evading pleasure devil. Not only did the powerful lightning inflict severe damage to her, but it also paralyzed her body for a second. Although this 1 second was short, it was enough for her to die several times in such an intense battle. The storm war halberd struck the pleasure devil's shoulder, and an arm flew out. Sulan did not stop. The storm war halberd launched more than 10 attacks in an instant, and all of them hit the pleasure devil's body. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Before the pleasure devil could recover from the paralysis, she died on the spot. With the death of the pleasure devil, a wave of soul energy emerged. At the same time, the pleasure devil's soul shadow appeared. As soon as the evil soul appeared, a repulsive force appeared out of thin air. This was the power of this world. According to the rules of this world, it would directly expel souls from the lower plane. Soul trap. At this moment, a spiritual light flashed and instantly struck the soul that was about to leave. Although the soul of the pleasure devil was only a part of her body, she was still a legendary figure. In addition to the souls that she had harvested previously, her spiritual energy was still very strong. Powerful energy surged out of Suren's body, instantly suppressing the pleasure demon's soul imprisonment. Then, to her horror, it condensed into a sparkling and translucent gem, a legendary-grade soul crystal. The battle has ended. Congratulations, host. You have obtained an epic victory. Congratulations, host. You have successfully killed a pleasure devil. You have received 98,500 experience points. You have received 3 platinum treasure chests. You have received an item, Blood of the Fallen Angel. Congratulations, host. Under your leadership, your army has successfully suppressed the rebellion in Sanfilto City. You have received 53,600 experience points. You have received 1 platinum treasure chest. You have defeated the devil and quelled the war. You have received 50 favorability from the citizens of Sanfilto City. Your reputation in Sanfilto City has reached respected. Your charm has increased by 2. Devil's Temptation, year 1688 of the Radiant Moon calendar. In the beginning of September, the king of the Kingdom of Florence was critically ill. The 3 princes began to fight for the right of succession. Under the instigation of the devil, a serious war broke out in Sanfilto City. The entire city was about to become the devil's nourishment. At this critical moment, you came to this city and successfully killed the pleasure devil, saving Sanfilto City. With the end of the war, your name and your army's fame began to spread throughout the Kingdom of Florence. Your reputation also began to rise throughout the continent. You have received a large amount of reputation. Reputation plus 40. Ding! Congratulations, host. Your experience bar is full. Your level has increased. Your current level is LV27. Congratulations, host. You have received 2 free attribute points, 2 skill points, and a platinum treasure chest. A series of system notifications rang in Sullen's ears. Sulen temporarily did not have time to count the spoils of war. He had just conquered Sanfilto City, and there were still many things to settle. Hansen. Yes, sir. A strong man stepped forward. Lead your men and immediately gather all the troops in the city. Kill anyone who resists without mercy. Yes, sir. Issue an announcement. From today onwards, Sanfilto City will be in a state of war. No one is allowed to leave without a pass. At the same time, seal the city and eliminate the remaining enemies. Organize people to clean up the ruins and treat the injured. Arrest all those who took advantage of the chaos to commit crimes and plunder. Kill anyone who resists without mercy. Check the treasury and the granary. Distribute the food in a unified manner. Do not inflate the prices. All nobles immediately return to their own mansions. Do not go out without my command. Sulen used the momentum of his victory to issue various orders. He completely controlled Sanfilto City in the shortest time possible. After a period of war, Sanfilto City began to rebuild. The army of the North Wind Duchy quickly gathered all the defeated troops. Then, under the leadership of the North Wind Duchy soldiers, they immediately began to work. The nobles who had already suffered heavy casualties did not dare to have any objections in front of Sulen. Too many people had died today, and these nobles had lost their courage. Chapter 419. After all the arrangements were made, Su Luen went to the palace with his 2 guards. The palace of the Kingdom of Florence was located in the north of Sanfilto City, in the center of the noble district. When Sulen came here, the whole palace had been occupied by the army of the Duchy of North Wind. Led by the 2 guards, Sulen went to find Phyllis. Phyllis, what's wrong? Sulen came to Phyllis, gently hugged her crying body, and asked. Sulen, boo-hoo, boo-hoo, my father is dead, my mother is dead, they're all dead. After seeing Sulen, Phyllis suddenly threw herself into Sullen's arms and cried bitterly. Cry, 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 and you'll be fine. I've avenged you, and I've killed the devil behind the scenes. You still have me. Sulen hugged Phyllis and comforted her. Finally, Phyllis was tired of crying. The fatigue of rushing for many days came, and she fell asleep in Sullen's arms. Sulen carried Phyllis and put her in a bedroom in the side hall. He arranged for the maids and guards to wait for her, and at the same time, checked King Hengli's body. After all, King Hengli was his father-in-law, and he was going to inherit the inheritance this time, so he naturally had to treat it seriously. King Hengli's body was in the hall, and next to it was the queen's coffin. After seeing King Hengli's body, Sulen found that King Hengli had been dead for 2 days, and his body was only casually collected in the coffin without any funerary objects or any measures to protect the body. The body was slightly smelly. He didn't know who helped him collect the corpses, but his subordinates were still around. Before he died, they couldn't sit still. After he died, they didn't even care. They directly stopped the corpses and attacked. This king was quite a failure. Sulen snapped his fingers and a light flashed. A crystal-clear coffin covered the corpse. This was an ice coffin that could be used to temporarily preserve the corpse. After preserving the 2 corpses, Sulen found a quiet palace and walked in. After finishing his work, he still hadn't had time to count his gains. He opened the system space. This time, he had obtained 5 platinum treasure chests. First, he took a shower and changed his clothes. After washing his hands, Sulen sat down again and calmed himself down. Only then did Sulen choose to open the treasure chest. As a dazzling light flashed by, the familiar sound of the system notification rang in his ears. Congratulations, host. You have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained a bottle of jade shavings golden pills. Congratulations, host. You've opened the platinum treasure chest. You've obtained the Building of Wonders blueprint, Qilin Garden. Congratulations, host. You have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained 1 army talisman. Congratulations, host. You have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item Thunder Secret Technique. Congratulations, host. You have opened the platinum treasure chest. You have obtained the item Mechanical Secret Technique. After the light dissipated, Sulen immediately looked at the items that he had just obtained. There were 10 jade shavings golden pills in a bottle. The effect was that it could increase any attribute by 1 point. Sulen planned to add them to his agility and spirit. In addition to the 2 attribute points that he had obtained from leveling up, Sullen's attributes were getting closer and closer to 50. A new Building of Wonders blueprint, Qilin Garden. Sulen was looking forward to this new Building of Wonders. He picked up the blueprint and began to look at it. Building of Wonders blueprint, Qilin Garden, category, Beast Pen. This blueprint records the detailed steps and process of building Qilin Garden. Qilin Garden, Building of Wonders. Beast Pen. Legend has it that this is the place where the mythical beast Qilin once lived. With Qilin Garden, the mounts in the city can become stronger and faster. It can also increase their growth rate, reduce the chances of the mounts falling sick, increase the reproduction rate of the mounts, and have a chance of attracting wild mounts. Rapid growth plus 35, indestructible plus 30, rare beasts plus 35, sturdiness plus 36, reproduction plus 35, disease reduction plus 35, mount taming plus 37, mutation plus 10. Additional effect, Mythical Beast's Might. Mythical Beast's Might possesses the aura of the mythical beast Qilin. Can forcibly tame mounts, one at a time. Seeing the effects of this Building of Wonders blueprint, Sullen's eyes lit up. This Qilin Garden was a good thing. Not only could it increase the growth rate of mounts, but it could also make them stronger and faster. Moreover, the special effect, mythical beasts might, could actually forcibly tame mounts? Then, if he caught a giant dragon, could he try the effect? Also, with this building, it would be much easier to tame your own creatures in the future. Of course, with so many benefits, it wasn't easy to build this building of wonders. The most important thing was that he needed a Qilin horn. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing. This world didn't even have a Qilin, so where was he going to find one? After putting away the building of wonders blueprint, Su Len could only wait until he had a Qilin horn before building it. The third box opened up a commander's seal. This commander's seal was a little special. The word female was written on it. Obviously, this was a female commander's seal. Commander's seal, female soldier. After use, you can recruit 1,000 female soldiers. Female soldiers have the ability to move quickly and agilely, and have decent attack power. Female soldier, elite female soldier, guard female soldier, female official, star officer, it was actually a female soldier. Su Len looked at the commander's seal in his hand in surprise. In the game, female soldiers weren't very strong. Most of the time, they were considered cannon fodder. However, this didn't mean that they were useless. Female soldiers were only powerful in the later stages. When they were promoted to star officer, they could summon lightning. They were completely a magical soldier. Besides being strong, female soldiers had another advantage. They were beautiful. Using female soldiers to guard the palace was a good choice. Su Len chose to use it immediately. The commander's seal instantly turned into countless fluorescent lights and then merged into Sullen's body. Although female soldiers were strong in the later stages, they were very weak in the early stages. Moreover, the recruitment and training cost was not cheap. When recruiting female soldiers, he would have to build a new female soldier barracks and a training ground. Su Len planned to wait for a while before building it. The remaining 2 platinum treasure chests contained 2 books, one of which was Thunder Secret Arts. Su Luen skimmed through it and found that it recorded a large number of thunder and lightning spells. For Su Luen, this was exactly what he needed. With this book, his understanding of the power of thunder and lightning would be improved once again. At the same time, he could also learn more thunder and lightning skills. Secret mechanical techniques. This book was an advanced knowledge of mechanical control that Su Len had learned before. After obtaining the secret mechanical techniques, Sullen's magic skills had become more powerful. He could even improve the iron golems. The 2 books contained a lot of knowledge. Su Len planned to take some time to study them. In addition to the 5 platinum treasure chests, Su Len also obtained a legendary level soul crystal from the Pleasure Devil and a bottle of fallen angel's blood. The soul crystal was a good thing and could be used in many places. Su Len planned to leave it for Hathaway to make a legendary golem. As for the fallen angel's blood, it was not very useful. After all, there was only 1 bottle. It was impossible to refine the blood. He could only give it to Hathaway as a test material. After putting these things away, Su Len took out the jade shard golden pill and poured out one. This pill looked like a piece of jade. It looked very beautiful and melted in his mouth. After using it, Su Len soon felt his body heating up slightly. 1 free attribute point had also been added to the system interface. Next, Su Len ate the remaining jade shard golden pills. Su Len obtained 10 free attribute points. After adding the 2 points from leveling up, he had a total of 12 points. He evenly distributed them to agility and spirit. After dealing with the harvest, Su Len began to deal with the following matters. After occupying San Filto, Su Len controlled the heart of the Kingdom of Florence. There were many things to be done next. After controlling the entire city, Su Len began to send people to check on the remaining members of the Henry family. Because of a battle for the throne, 3 princes had died directly. King Henry had a total of 5 sons and 4 daughters. The remaining 2 sons had also died in the previous turmoil. After all, during the battle with the Pleasure Devil, many nobles had died because of the Pleasure Devil. The 2 princes were unlucky and also died. Su Len could guarantee that he definitely did not kill them. In other words, there were no male members of the Henry family in the direct line of descent. Of course, as a family that had lasted for hundreds of years, there were still many men in the collateral line of the Henry family. However, regardless of whether it was Su Len or others, they would not have the right to inherit the throne. The 4 princesses of the Henry family had long been married off to the great nobles and members of the royal families of other countries. In addition, they were far away from here, so they could be ignored directly. Therefore, the one who had the most right to inherit the throne was Su Len's wife, Phyllis. In fact, queens were not rare in this world. No, they were very common. Not to mention, the most famous queen on the continent was the Red Dragon Queen. There were also many queens in other countries. There was basically no problem for Phyllis to ascend the throne. However, considering Phyllis's political intelligence and skills, and her complete lack of experience in governing a country, it was necessary to implement a 2-king system. Su Len intended to become the king of the Kingdom of Florence together with Phyllis. As for whether the remaining nobles in San Filto agreed or not, it was not a problem in Su Len's eyes at all. Those who did not agree had already died in the attack of the Pleasure Devil. The remaining nobles firmly supported this decision. After restoring order in the city, Su Len and Phyllis buried the king and queen. After some discussion, they decided to implement the 2-king system. Next, Su Len asked people to arrange the ascension ceremony. In fact, the materials needed for the ascension ceremony had already been prepared long ago. There were 3 portions, 1 for each of the 3 princes. Now, it was all convenient for him. Chapter 420. After taking complete control of San Filto, Su Len and Hathaway held a funeral to bury the king and queen. After that, they discussed the preparations for the ascension ceremony. Because Su Len did not lift the ban, the nobles did not know that Su Len was preparing to ascend the throne. Perhaps some smart people had guessed it, but they could only pretend to be deaf and dumb in the face of the powerful Su Len. All the materials needed for the ascension ceremony had been prepared. As soon as Su Len gave the order, the attendants began to get busy. With the materials prepared by the 3 princes, it only took 2 days for the ascension ceremony to be completed. On the 3rd day, Su Len lifted the ban, and the nobles of San Filto were invited to the palace to watch the ceremony. In the main hall of the palace, the nobles of San Filto had gathered in the imperial court. In just a month, the situation had changed. The few princes who were most likely to become the new king of the Kingdom of Florence had disappeared. The nobles who were bustling in the main hall had become sparse. These nobles were naturally aware of today's ascension ceremony. Now that the princes were dead and there were no successors, they naturally hoped that the Parliament of Nobles would jointly elect a new king instead of letting Su Len decide alone. Even though Su Len had shown great strength last time, these nobles who were used to being high and mighty had not changed their views. Count Anthony, Duke Su Len held the ascension ceremony without permission, which violated the laws of the Kingdom of Florence. I think Marquis Kent is more qualified to inherit the throne, Viscount Goen whispered to Count Anthony. Although Su Len was powerful, he was not a noble of the kingdom after all. Although he had tyrannical strength, no one was willing to give up power. In their opinion, even if there was a new king, it was still up to them to govern the kingdom. Count Anthony looked at Goen and then at the nobles in the hall. Many of them still wanted to renegotiate with the Parliament of Nobles. Even though they had seen Su Len's strength, some of them were still unwilling to believe it. In their opinion, the kingdom had no successor, and it was a good opportunity for them to expand their power. These people had been in the upper echelons for too long and had forgotten the most basic rules of this world. Let's talk about it later. Besides, Duke Sullen's attitude today has already made it clear that he wants to make it an established fact. Don't you think it's a little late? Anthony shook his head and didn't intend to stand out. As an old fox, he wouldn't easily take a stand, let alone stand out personally. This Duke Sulan has gone too far. If he hadn't forced us not to go out, how could we not know what he wants to do until today when we are about to ascend the throne? Goen snorted coldly, obviously very angry. Don't talk so much. Come, let me put it on for you. Sulan smiled and stood up. Phyllis nodded and bowed slightly. Sulan put the crown on Phyllis's head and stepped back. He bowed slightly and said, "My dear queen, you are so beautiful." Really? Phyllis twirled around with the crown on her head and winked at Sulan. Of course, you are the most beautiful today. Sulan said seriously. Phyllis smiled and then lifted the corner of her dress to make a bow to Sulan. My king, you are also very handsome today. Ha! Phyllis couldn't help but laugh as soon as she finished the bow. Alright, it's almost time. We should go and ascend the throne. Sulan and Phyllis played for a while and then looked at the time. Phyllis nodded. Okay. Sulan took Phyllis to the outside of the palace under the protection of many attendants. Kane, the guard of the palace, was already waiting there. When he saw Sulan, he immediately greeted him respectfully. The group continued to walk into the palace. My lord. As soon as they entered the palace, the attendants and soldiers of North Wind Principality all saluted. When the nobles in the palace saw Sulan and Phyllis coming in, they stopped talking and looked at them. Some of these people sneered, some were dissatisfied, some were expressionless, and some were fearful. No matter what, Sullen's strength had made some of them afraid. I'm very sorry to have kept you waiting. Sulan looked at these nobles and said with a smile. Mr. Sulan, you are not a noble of the Kingdom of Florence. Why didn't you go through the Parliament of Nobles to choose a king? This seriously violates the system of the Kingdom of Florence. It is illegal. As soon as they walked into the hall, a noble asked righteously. The entire palace became silent in an instant. It was so quiet that it was scary. Sullen's smile froze for a moment, then he stopped smiling and turned to look at the owner of the voice. He said with a bit of contempt, "Who are you?" You. Hearing Sullen's words, this middle-aged noble was furious. This was openly despising him and his family. I am Viscount Goen, a member of the Parliament of Nobles. Oh. Sulan nodded and said, I don't know you. You. Goen widened his eyes in anger. Fortunately, he understood his purpose. He suppressed his anger and said, I am a member of the Parliament of Nobles. What you are doing is against the law of the Kingdom of Florence. Are you teaching me how to do things? Sulan raised his eyebrows. You are acting recklessly. You won't be recognized by the nobles of Florence. Sulan looked at him coldly and said, Phyllis, the daughter of His Majesty King Henry, naturally has the right to inherit the throne after all of King Henry's sons died. This is in accordance with the law and rules. As for the Parliament of Nobles, they only have the right to choose a successor after the royal family has no children or after the royal family abdicates and gives up the right to inherit. Therefore, it is reasonable and legal for Phyllis to inherit the throne, and it is in line with the national conditions of Florence. You are not a noble of the Kingdom of Florence. This is the internal affairs of the Kingdom of Florence. You have no right to interfere. After hearing Sullen's words, Goen said with an ugly expression. I have no right to interfere? Su Luan sneered and took a step forward. He stared at Gon coldly and then glanced at the surrounding nobles. When Sanfelto City was in danger, I saved it. This city was also conquered by me from the chaos. It can be said that it is my spoils of war. Phyllis is also my wife. Speaking of which, I am also your savior. How dare you say that I don't have the right to be your savior? What were you doing at that time? You were a fool who was being played by a devil. That was because we were waiting for an opportunity to delay time. Yes, waiting for an opportunity to delay time for the army to arrive. Goen was a little speechless. The army to rescue the king? How many days have passed? Why haven't I seen the army to rescue the king? Are you delaying time like this? Su Len looked at him mockingly. Are you sure that the army to rescue the king will arrive in time to collect your corpses? Goen's face was a little pale and he said stubbornly, this is not within your jurisdiction. Chapter 421. You can't say anything, right? Su Len glanced at him and ignored him. He held Phyllis's hand and continued to move forward. I saved San Filto City and killed the demon to avenge the dead. Now that the kingdom has no ruler, I naturally have the right to choose an heir to ascend the throne. Su Len said loudly, his eyes sweeping across the hall. From today onwards, Phyllis is the queen of the kingdom of Florence, and I will ascend the throne as the king of the kingdom of Florence. Su Len, you are just a nobleman who was lucky enough to gain a foothold. You are just a bumpkin. What right do you have to ascend the throne? After hearing Su Len announce himself as the king of the kingdom of Florence, Gon's face changed greatly. You are asking for death. Kill. Sullen's eyes flashed coldly, and his heart was filled with murderous intent. He shouted sternly. Yes. Cain, who had been waiting in the hall for a long time, immediately rushed over. Before anyone could react, he raised his sword and slashed down, killing Gon. The football-sized head flew up, and blood splashed 3 feet away. The noblemen who had not yet reacted were instantly sprayed with blood all over their faces. Then they screamed and hurriedly fled in all directions. Bang! The headless body fell down, and the strong smell of blood instantly filled the hall. Clean it up. Su Len said expressionlessly. Several attendants skillfully carried the body away, and 2 more people wiped the blood clean. Then they poured a bucket of water to wash and wipe. In just a few minutes, the floor looked brand new. If it were not for the smell of blood in the air, everyone would think that the scene just now was just an illusion. Well, the people who are in the way have been sent away. Who else has any last words, opinions about Phyllis and me ascending the throne? Su Len said after looking around. Wherever he looked, all the noblemen couldn't help but lower their heads. What opinions? Those were last words. Didn't you see the example just now? Hurry up and ascend the throne, we have no opinions. I am a very democratic person. Everyone can speak freely. If you have any opinions, you can raise them. I will consider them seriously. Su Len said seriously. No opinions, no opinions. The other noblemen in the hall said one after another. You really don't have any objections? I'm giving you a chance, Su Len emphasized. I really don't mind. It seems that my ascension to the throne is what everyone wants. Su Len nodded with satisfaction, and then said, then let's continue the ceremony. The grand coronation ceremony continued. Su Len took out the crown and crowned Phyllis, and then himself. The nobles below cooperated very well. They cheered when they should, and bowed when they should. Everything was so harmonious. The enthronement ceremony ended amidst peaceful cheers. Congratulations, host. You have successfully ascended the throne. A large amount of data flashed before Sullen's eyes. Congratulations, host. Your duchy has been upgraded to a kingdom. The country template is currently being upgraded. Importing national data. Ding. It has been detected that the host's actual territories are Beifeng Duchy and Fighter City. Please take control of more territories as soon as possible. Ding. Please take control of the Kingdom of Florence as soon as possible. Congratulations, host. You have successfully upgraded to a kingdom. You have received a diamond treasure chest. Congratulations, host. You have successfully upgraded to a kingdom. Your Imperial Jade Seal has been upgraded. Congratulations, host. You have successfully upgraded to a kingdom. You have received a miracle building blueprint. A series of system prompts sounded in his ears. However, the reward for upgrading to a kingdom this time was much less than the reward for establishing a duchy. Of course, it was very likely that Sulan did not fully control the Kingdom of Florence. Only when Sulan fully controlled the Kingdom of Florence would all the rewards be issued. Although the rewards were much less, Sulan was still in a good mood. He opened the system and began to check the rewards this time. A diamond treasure chest, a miracle building blueprint, and an upgraded Imperial Jade Seal. Sulan opened the diamond treasure chest, and a gorgeous light and shadow effect flashed before his eyes. The next second, a familiar system prompt sounded in Sulan's ears. Congratulations, host. You have successfully opened the diamond treasure chest. You have received the book Elemental Fission and Elemental Fusion. After hearing the system prompt, Sulan was slightly stunned. He immediately reacted. The book, Elemental Fission and Elemental Fusion, was actually opened from the treasure chest. Just by hearing the name, one could tell that this book was a book about the knowledge of the elemental furnace. Sulan simply flipped through it. This book was not only about theoretical knowledge, but it also included a large amount of data and detailed steps. However, it was still very difficult to produce according to the data in the book. Of course, this book was not without benefits. It helped Sulan save a lot of time. It pointed him in the right direction, and he did not have to take any detours. After putting away the book, Elemental Fission and Elemental Fusion, Sulan picked up the miracle building blueprint that he had just received. This blueprint was a little special. It was called Ipang Palace. It was actually an architectural blueprint of a palace complex. Miracle Building Blueprint, Ipang Palace. It records the blueprint of a large palace complex. After using it, Ipang Palace can be built. Sulan looked at the blueprint. The construction of such a palace complex could not be completed in a short period of time. Moreover, it would require a lot of manpower and material resources. For the current Sulan, it was not worth it. This blueprint could only be used after a long time. Casually putting away the miracle building blueprint, Sulan stretched his body and began to deal with other matters. After Sulan and Phyllis ascended to the throne, Sulan sent official documents in his and Phyllis's name to the surrounding cities to announce the legitimacy of the throne. The news received was mixed. The territories that were originally under the direct control of the kingdom had already accepted the appointment and recognized Sulan and Phyllis as the king and queen. Some of the remaining nobles recognized Sulan and Phyllis, some of them were watching with ambiguous attitudes, and some of them directly declared that Sulan and Phyllis's thrones were illegitimate and refused to recognize them as the king and queen. Sulan had already prepared himself for this situation. He tried to rope in the nobles who accepted the appointment directly. He also sent people to those who were neutral and ambiguous. As for those who refused, he issued official documents requesting them to immediately surrender and personally apologize to San Filto. Naturally, the nobles would not agree to such a request. However, Sulan did not want them to agree. This would only show that he had too much. At the same time, Sulan began to recruit soldiers in San Filto and the territories under the direct control of the royal family. Due to the previous war, the soldiers in San Filto had suffered heavy casualties. He was now preparing to rebuild the army. At the same time, after the reconstruction was completed, he would crusade against the rebellious lords. However, while Sulan was busy, an unexpected piece of news came. "You said that Marquis Savoy sent people?" Sulan asked. "Yes, Your Majesty. As the most powerful lord in the northern provinces, Marquis Savoy was also the other successor of the Kingdom of Florence. However, he was a little unlucky. It was not easy for him to wait for such a good opportunity. In the end, when he arrived at San Filto, Sulan had already ascended the throne, giving him no chance at all. However, Marquis Savoy knew that he had not made his stance clear yet. If he announced that he supported Sulan, the nobles in the northern part of Florence would not be able to do anything. Those who were neutral would probably immediately preside over Sulan. Even many nobles who were clearly against him would change their minds. "Let him in," Sulan said. "Yes, Your Majesty." The servant bowed and slowly retreated. About 5 minutes later, the servant walked in with a young man. "Your Majesty, the eldest son of Marquis Savoy is here." "Vader, long time no see." Sulan smiled and stood up. "Long time no see, Your Grace." Vader bowed respectfully. Hearing how Vader addressed him, Sulan did not have any expression. He was still smiling. "Sir Vader, why have you come to see me this time?" "Your Grace, my father does not agree with what you have done this time." "Is that so? I heard that when you came to San Filto, you brought an army of 10,000 men. Why are you preparing to go to war with me?" Sulan said in a low voice. "We did not mean that. We only brought the army to protect my safety," Vader said with a shrug. "Protect your safety?" Sulan rolled his eyes. "You need to bring an army of 10,000 men to protect my safety? I know that you are upset that I became king first, but what is done cannot be undone. It is better to accept it." Vader shook his head and continued, "Your Grace, your situation is not very good now. 1/3 of the nobles in the entire kingdom are against you. Why are you unwilling to give up the throne? If you agree to give up the throne, the Savoy family is willing to bear your expenses this time and compensate you. It seems that you want to replace me." Sulan instantly understood the Savoy family's plan. The Savoy family wanted to replace the Henry family as the new royal family of Florence. "This is a normal transfer of power within the Kingdom of Florence," Vader said. Sulan smiled slightly. "Do you think your strength is enough?" Vader glanced at Sulan and said, "I still have to thank Sir Sulan for the life essence last time. After using it, my father has already advanced to the legendary level." "Advanced to the legendary level? No wonder you are so confident. But the legendary level is different from the legendary level." Sulan shook his head. "How about this? I can give you a chance. I will fight with your father. As long as he can win, I will withdraw and hand over the Kingdom of Florence to you. And if I win, I don't need you to pay anything. You just need to announce that I am the king of the Kingdom of Florence. I need to go back and report to my father. Then I will tell you the result," Vader said with a nod. "Of course." Sulan nodded. Chapter 422. Vader quickly left San Filto City and returned to the encampment of the army in Cult City without stopping. He then went straight to the largest tent in the center. "Father, I'm back," Vader said respectfully to the Marquis of Savoy. "Have a seat." The Marquis of Savoy nodded. After Vader sat down, he asked, "What did he say?" "His Excellency Sulan doesn't agree to abdicate," Vader said. "Humph, that's not surprising." The Marquis of Savoy sneered. He stood up from his seat and walked to the map placed in the tent. "No one will easily give up power that's at their fingertips. Moreover, 1/3 of the territory has already recognized him as the king." "What else did he say?" The Marquis of Savoy picked up a charcoal pencil and marked on the map. "He said that if father wants to compete with him for the throne, we'll have to fight him. If you win, he'll choose to withdraw and give up the Kingdom of Florence. If we lose, we'll have to recognize him as the king of the Kingdom of Florence," Vader said in a low voice. Father, I think we should just attack directly. As long as we mobilize, I believe many nobles will follow suit. When the time comes, San Filto City won't be able to stop us. Mobilize? That's easy for you to say. The Marquis of Savoy glanced at his son and put the charcoal pencil back. It's easy to mobilize, but what about after that? Many nobles will respond, but most of them won't put in any effort. They'll wait for us and Sulen to fight until both sides suffer, then take advantage of the situation. Don't think too highly of those nobles. What kind of people are they? They won't act until they see the hair. The Marquis of Savoy snorted. After circling the tent twice, the Marquis of Savoy said, "Looks like we can only use battle." After thinking for a long time, the Marquis of Savoy nodded in agreement. He was very confident in his own strength. In his impression, although Sulen had a record of killing a legendary orc, that orc was already seriously injured. Therefore, he felt that he should be on par with Sulen. What he didn't know was that different people had different physiques, and the same applied to legends as well. The next step was to discuss the time and place. These matters were quickly finalized. The two sides agreed to fight 30 miles northeast of Feather City. The time was set for 3 days later in the morning. After discussing the details of the battle, Sulen began to deal with other matters. He was preparing to build a military camp in San Filto. Originally, more than half of the soldiers in San Filto had been killed or injured. Although Sulen later took in some scattered soldiers, these soldiers were far from being elite. Therefore, he was preparing to build a military camp and recruit new soldiers. He would also send the original soldiers to the military camp for training. Only after going through such training could these soldiers reach the standard of a qualified soldier of Beifeng Principality. After Sulen ascended the throne, the southern provinces had the most opposition. In fact, Sulen's reputation was mostly spread in the northern provinces. Not many people in the south knew about it, and since a long time ago, the southern provinces had looked down on the northern provinces. The main reason was the economic disparity. For the southern provinces, the northerners were a group of barbarians who liked to fight and kill. What's more, Sulen's territory was in the northern wilderness, which was further north of the northern provinces. In their eyes, it was a completely barren land. The best way to make these people admit that Sulen was the king was to persuade them physically. Sulen didn't plan to transfer the army of Beifeng Principality, so he could only rebuild the army in San Filto. Compared to Beifeng City, the conditions in San Filto were much better. At least there were more than 150,000 people here. With enough manpower, the construction of the military camp was very fast. In addition to the ordinary military camp, Sulen also built a military camp for female soldiers. Sulen was going to let the maids in the palace serve as the first batch of female soldiers in the military camp. There were still a lot of female soldiers in this world. The most famous one was the Amazon female warriors in the southern rainforest. Don't think that they were easy to bully just because they were women. In fact, the Amazon female warriors were very powerful. In addition to the Amazon female warriors, there were also female soldiers among the elves, especially among the drows. Sulen's plan to build female soldiers didn't attract much attention. Most people just thought it was the king's hobby. While the military camp was being built, Sulen began to clean up San Filto. The first thing to be changed was the sanitation. Sulen was used to the cleanliness of Beifeng City. After coming to San Filto, he hated the dirty streets, so after the city settled down, Sulen began to set up sanitation regulations to clean the streets. There was plenty of manpower in San Filto City, and Sulen easily recruited a large number of workers. Although they were called workers, most of them were actually poor people. More than 90% of the cities in the world had slums. These people were cheap and only needed a small amount of money to hire them. After having the manpower, Sulen began to issue laws. No one was allowed to dump garbage or feces on the streets. Violators would be fined and sentenced to 1 week of unpaid labor. Of course, this kind of thing couldn't just be an order. If people were not allowed to dump garbage everywhere, they had to be given a place to dump garbage. Otherwise, this order would not be beneficial to the people but harmful. Sulen selected some people from the slums and divided San Filto into districts. Each district would have a garbage transfer station. The residents and merchants around would need to send their garbage here. Then, these people would drive the garbage out of the city every morning. At the same time, Sulen also sent people to start building public toilets in each district. After these things were built, Sulen issued a ban on dumping garbage and defecating everywhere. The nobles in the city were puzzled as to why Sulen wasn't in a hurry to quell the rebellion. However, under Sulen's power, they were very well behaved on the surface. However, under Sulen's power, they were constantly up to no good in private. In order to obtain information, Sulen formed the Embroidered Uniform Guard. Now that he was the king, Sulen naturally expanded the Embroidered Uniform Guard. However, the Embroidered Uniform Guard wasn't something that just anyone could become. Sulen could only recruit 20 people from other places and use these 20 people to build the framework. Then, he would recruit others and quickly establish the Embroidered Uniform Guard. With the Embroidered Uniform Guard, Sulen would be able to know every move of the nobles in San Filto. With the Embroidered Uniform Guard collecting information, it would be very useful when Sulen went to quell the rebellion of the nobles. There was no need to say how useful information was in a war. Scouting, eavesdropping, breaking ties, spreading rumors, acting as a spy, and so on were too many. Time passed quickly, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. Early in the morning, Sulen left some instructions to Phyllis and then left San Filto alone. As for the soldiers of Beifeng Duchy, they stayed behind to protect the palace and prevent the nobles from causing trouble when Sulen wasn't around. The Pegasus was very fast, and it only took 10 minutes to arrive at the location of the battle. When Sulen arrived, he found that Marquis Savoy was already waiting there. In addition to him, there were about 500 cavalrymen waiting not far away. Sulen took a few glances and didn't pay attention to them. "Long time no see, Marquis Savoy," Sulen said as he dismounted. "Long time no see, Duke Beifeng." Savoy nodded. After a few simple pleasantries, both sides went into the main topic. "Marquis Savoy, we are clear about the conditions. Do you have any objections?" Sulen asked. "No." "That's good. When you lose, Marquis Savoy, don't go back on your word," Sulen said with a smile. Marquis Savoy is too confident. I was worried that Marquis Savoy would go back on his word. Don't worry, I can still afford to lose. Besides, how could I lose? Savoy said confidently. Sulen smiled. In that case, let's begin. Okay. Sulen took out his storm war halberd, while Savoy took out a two-handed heavy sword. As soon as they were ready, rays of light flashed past Sulen's body. Greater haste. Slow. Arcane Missile X3. A spiritual light instantly enveloped the Marquis of Savoy's body. He felt his body sink, as if he was standing in mud. His movements were clearly much slower. Before he could react, a series of arcane missiles flew at him. Savoy's expression changed slightly. He dodged while blocking. Sulen took the opportunity to rush up and smash down with his storm war halberd. The battered and exhausted Savoy didn't care about his reputation. He rolled to the side to dodge. The storm war halberd fiercely smashed into the ground, and then the war halberd swept across, raising a large amount of dirt into the air. The war halberd carried a biting cold wind, and the wind blew the dirt away in all directions, covering a radius of a few meters. If one was not prepared, one's eyes would be blinded if they were not careful. Savoy was also very experienced in battle. The moment the dirt flew up, he covered his eyes with one hand and swung his heavy two-handed sword with the other. Whirlwind slash. Clang. The heavy sound of metal clashing rang out as the storm war halberd and the two-handed heavy sword collided. Savoy's weapon was of good quality, and it wasn't damaged by the storm war halberd. However, as soon as they came into contact, Savoy felt an irresistible force. Before he could adjust himself, a storm of attacks descended upon him. The Marquis of Savoy could only defend himself pathetically in the face of such an attack. He had no room to retaliate. Clang! A loud sound rang out, and the two-handed sword flew high into the air. In the next second, the storm war halberd's cold blade pressed against Savoy's chest. Sulen checked Marquis Savoy's information and said, "Announce that you recognize me as the king and swear your loyalty to me when you return." "Yes, master," Marquis Savoy said respectfully. "Well, take your men back and wait for my call at any time," Su Luan said and mounted the horse and left. Marquis Savoy also left with his men after Sulen left. Over the next few days, something major happened in the Kingdom of Florence. One of the four electors, the most powerful noble family in the north, the House of Savoy, suddenly announced that they recognized Sulen as the king of the Kingdom of Florence and swore their loyalty to the king. This had a huge impact on the entire Kingdom of Florence. The nobles in the northern provinces who refused to recognize Sulen immediately became obedient after hearing the news. Some nobles even directly announced that they recognized Su Luan as the king of Florence, and those neutral, fence-sitting nobles who were originally in a wait-and-see state also expressed their recognition of Su Luan as the king after seeing this situation. With the support of the Marquis of Savoy, the entire north quickly settled down. Even the nobles who were still stubbornly refusing to recognize Sulen kept a low profile. However, Sulen was very vengeful. How could he let these guys go? He directly ordered the Marquis of Savoy to lead an army to eliminate the stubborn nobles. After receiving Sulen's order, the Marquis of Savoy immediately gathered an army to suppress the rebellion. After subduing the Marquis of Savoy, Sulen could finally free up his hands to deal with the restless nobles. It took a week for the construction of the barracks in San Filto City to be completed. Sulen began to let the original scattered soldiers re-enter the barracks in batches for training. On the other side, the female soldiers' camp also recruited 100 palace maids for training. There were 2 instructors for these female soldiers, a half-elf and a drow. Sulen did not intend to let these female soldiers fight head-on. Instead, he intended to let them guard the palace. After Sulen's strict orders, the sanitation of San Filto City was greatly improved. Although there was still a lot of garbage in some remote corners, the main roads had been cleaned up very neatly. The smell of human and animal excrement that could be smelled as soon as one entered the city had also been greatly reduced. Sulen recruited a large number of people to repair the main roads of the city. The originally muddy soil road began to be flattened by a large number of stone rollers. After the road was flattened, a layer of gravel began to be placed on it and continued to be rolled. In this way, the original soil road was replaced with a stone road. On both sides of the road, Sulen also asked the construction team to dig 2 drainage ditches. The drainage ditches were not large, only 50 centimeters wide and 60 centimeters deep. These drainage ditches extended along the road. The drainage ditches were covered with stone slabs, and there were some gaps where the slabs were connected. With the drainage ditches, even if it rained, there was no need to worry about waterlogging on the city's roads. In this era, waterlogging was common in the cities. Most of the time, when it rained, there would be water everywhere in the city. Although the drainage ditches could not completely eliminate waterlogging, most of the time, waterlogging would not occur again. The amount of work required to flatten the road was huge. Sulen recruited a large number of workers from the slums. For a time, even the security of the slums improved a lot. Speaking of security, Sanfilto City's security was not good. It should be said that security was generally bad in this world. No matter which city it was, there were people who committed crimes. Underworld organizations, gang members, gray areas, officials, nobles, and so on. Not to mention the current world, even in Sullen's previous life, if the law was strictly enforced, a large number of people would go to jail or even eat peanuts. Corrupt, deceitful businessmen, black-hearted fake medicine, poisoned food, and so on. There were also all kinds of false advertisements on television stations. A group of people formed groups to cheat the elderly in the name of health consultations and safety lectures. There were even many people who used all kinds of methods to escape the punishment of the law. In Sullen's previous life, he heard a saying, "Justice may be late, but it will never be absent." However, this was not the original meaning of this saying. The original words of the judge were, "Justice will never be absent, it will only be late." The meaning was to criticize late justice and to express dissatisfaction with inefficient court trials. It meant that late justice was not true justice to everyone. But at some point in time, this sentence had been changed to this. The meaning was completely opposite, completely overturning the original idea, and instead praising the late justice. In his previous life, there was a rape case in the number 10 special family area. The person who discovered the corpse was sentenced to death and executed by firing squad for 23 years before his case was cleared. Meanwhile, the real murderer was arrested 9 years later and admitted to the crime. He waited until 23 years after the crime was committed before he was officially sentenced to death. Sulen was resolute in his crackdown on crime. Moreover, the laws in the Beifeng Principality were completely different from the laws in this world. The laws in this world were very similar to the laws in the Western world in his previous life. It was basically a sham. In front of the law, the nobles had special privileges. Apart from the nobles, the rich could also form a powerful group of lawyers. They had plenty of time and money to slowly drag it out with you. How could ordinary people drag it out with them? When they could not hold on any longer, they could only withdraw the lawsuit. In fact, these laws were completely to protect the interests of the privileged class. The laws in the Beifeng Principality were completely different. The most basic law in the Beifeng Principality was that those who committed a crime must be punished. For example, the most common reform through labor. This type of punishment was mainly used in cases where the degree of the crime was relatively small and did not cause much harm. Of course, there were many types of reform through labor, from cleaning the streets to transporting garbage to mining. In the Beifeng Principality's laws, there was no such thing as mediation. Those who violated the law had to be punished. If the crime was serious, they would be sent to mining and smashing stones. If the crime was light, they would be sent to clean the streets. All prisoners had to complete these jobs to earn living expenses during their time in prison. Otherwise, they could only starve. There was no need to talk about humanitarianism. When these prisoners committed crimes, why did they not talk about humanitarianism? If they talked about humanitarianism to criminals, then what about the victims? Moreover, in the Beifeng Principality's laws, the role of lawyers was reduced to the extreme. Basically, there were no serious crimes like robbery or murder. With a lawyer representing them, they could get a light sentence or even acquittal. The judicial officials in Sanfilto City could only amend the laws according to Sullen's wishes. At the same time, Sulen strengthened the training of the city guards. He had already planned to completely eliminate all kinds of gangs and illegal organizations in Sanfilto City, especially the slums. This would be the focus of the cleanup. Chapter 424. The slums were common in most cities in this world. Apart from being dirty and messy, they were also the hotbeds of evil and the darkest corners of the city. Murder, robbery, and smuggling were common occurrences here. Even the churches in the city rarely came here. People died here almost every day. Even the priests of the Dawnlight Shrine, who were known for their kindness, did not care about the lives of these people. However, things began to change with the arrival of the new king. The most obvious change was that many of the slums were hired to work. Although the work was hard, they could eat their fill and even get a salary. This gave many people hope to survive. Who would want to die if they could live? In an instant, these slum people burst out with a strong work enthusiasm and were grateful to Suluan, the king who brought them hope. However, the changes in the slums also made some people think differently. "Boss, I've asked around. Those bumpkins earn about 10 copper nars a day. The women get 8, and even the children get 5, a skinny, wretched-looking man with a mustache said excitedly. "I've done some calculations. There are more than 200 people in our gang's territory. If they are all adults, they can earn 2,000 copper nars a day, which is equivalent to 2 kinnar. That's 60 kinnar a month. That's not a small amount." A fierce-looking man with a scar on his face said with a hint of greed in his eyes, "Looks like our king is really rich." The scar-faced man took out a small knife and played with it. He then said, "Mouse, pass down the order. Everyone who goes to work must pay 80% of the safety fee when they return. I'll leave this to you. If anyone dares to hide it and refuse to pay, break one of their hands. Don't worry, I'll do it properly. I won't miss a single copper nar." The wretched-looking man with a mustache patted his chest and promised. After the health regulations were issued, San Filto City changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The impact of the war had gradually faded, and the city became more prosperous than before. Knock knock knock. A series of knocks sounded. "Come in," Sulen said without raising his head. Sulen couldn't help but sniff at the fragrance. He looked up and said in surprise, "Phyllis, why are you here?" "I'm here to see you." Phyllis, who was wearing a court lady's dress, said with a lunchbox in her hand. "You'll be living here for the next 2 days. Although the country's affairs are important, you should also pay attention to your rest. This is the meat soup that I asked someone to prepare for you. Try it first." "All right." Smelling the tempting aroma, Sulen also felt his stomach turning. He picked up the broth and started to gulp it down. Phyllis chuckled and wiped the rice off the corner of his mouth with a handkerchief. "Don't drink so fast. No one's fighting with you. If it's not enough, there's more here." "That's enough." Sulen patted his belly and put down the bowl. "What have you been up to these days?" Phyllis asked as she put away the tableware. Sulen picked up the documents on the table and said, "Busy making laws." "Making laws? Are there any problems with the old laws?" Phyllis looked at Sulen in confusion. "Big problems." Sulen curled his lips and said, "The laws are too simple and crude. The punishment for crimes is also very low. Most of the time, it's impossible to uphold justice by following the laws. In addition to these laws are also very vague about taxation. For nobles and wealthy merchants, taxes are reduced or directly exempted. For commoners, there are more than 100 types of taxes, such as head tax, toll tax, goods tax, land tax, housing tax, city gate tax, salt tax, and so on. If the taxes are collected strictly according to the laws, it's not so bad. But I've checked the tax records over the years. The taxes are getting lower and lower year after year. It's obvious that the officials are colluding to embezzle the taxes. I've also asked someone to investigate the specific tax situation. It turns out that the tax collected by the state is 1 silver nar, while the tax officials directly collect 1.5 or even 2 silver nars. The taxes of civilians are increasing year after year, but the state's taxes are falling. In the end, the state doesn't collect enough taxes, but the civilians pay more. The state loses money, and so do the civilians. Only the nobles and the officials get rich. Sulen sneered and threw the documents on the table. Hearing Sulen's words, Phyllis was a bit anxious. Then what should we do? Should we just arrest the tax officials and the nobles and force them to hand over the taxes? That can solve the problem, but it won't do much for the people at the bottom. If we arrest these people and replace them with others, the result will probably be the same as before, Sulen continued. The better way is to improve the laws and strengthen the supervision of the officials and nobles. Then let's do as you say. I support you. Phyllis walked to Sulen and hugged him. Sulen gently stroked Phyllis's hair. Don't worry. It will be better. Compared to North Wind Principality, the Kingdom of Florence had existed for hundreds of years. Although it had a larger population and a larger territory, it was much worse than North Wind Principality in all aspects. In terms of taxes, in North Town, no one dared to violate the rules set by Sulen, and no one dared to embezzle. There were many successful experiences in North Town, and the key ones were the prison built by Sulen and the twice-yearly ideological education. Officials at all levels had to go to the prison for ideological education every 6 months. Plus, there were all kinds of rules and supervisors in North Town. Basically, no one dared to cross the line. Even if someone wanted to do so, they would be caught very soon. Sulen gave officials the right to report. There was an office in the city hall that received reports, and they needed to report with their real names. Even normal civilians could report officials to the city hall. Of course, if the report was verified, the person who reported it would be rewarded, but if it was false, the person who reported it would also be severely punished. This kind of reporting was originally used to restrict officials. Sulen didn't want it to become a tool for someone to take revenge. This system had been running in North Town for more than a year, and it seemed to be working well. There was a prison in San Filto City, but it didn't have all kinds of bonuses like the prison in North Town. Therefore, if Sulen wanted to follow North Town's rules, he would have to build a new prison. Since he had decided to do it, the sooner, the better. After Sulen marked out the location of the prison, he asked people to build it according to the blueprint he gave. The workers were still recruited from the slums. The slums had a lot of manpower, and they were cheap. Ever since Sulen and Phyllis ascended to the throne, San Filto City had been constantly building. All kinds of construction projects provided a lot of jobs in San Filto City. With a job, there would naturally be income. With income, there would be consumption. This would promote the city's commerce, and the materials needed for various projects would be purchased from the market. Business activities would become more frequent, and the entire city would become prosperous. San Filto City was now more prosperous than it was before the war. Seeing such a prosperous scene, no one would have thought that this city had just gone through a war half a month ago. In order to better control San Filto City, Suren also contacted Hathaway through the communication magic array and asked her to transfer a group of grassroots officials from Beifeng Dukedom to San Filto City, as well as a group of tamed falcons from Beifeng City. The officer training school in North Town City had never stopped. In the past, due to the lack of manpower, the first few batches of training lasted 1 month. Now, it had been extended to 6 months, and the number of people in each batch had increased to 100. The most recent batch of officials was about to finish their training, and they were all sent to San Filto City. Magic communication was expensive, so Sulen planned to build an eagle nest in San Filto City and use falcons to communicate. At the same time, to strengthen the connection with North Town City, Sulen planned to build a teleportation circle. Of course, this teleportation circle could only be used for emergency communication. The teleportation circle cost a lot to build, and it required a lot of mana. The teleportation circle in North Town City was powered by the elemental pool, but even so, it couldn't be used frequently. San Filto City was thousands of miles away from North Town City, so the energy consumption was even higher. He also needed to build an elemental pool. Footsteps came from the corridor, and then there was a hurried knock on the door. "Come in." The door was pushed open, and a servant came in hurriedly. "Your Majesty, our workers in charge of the construction work were killed." Su Len suddenly looked up. "What did you say?" The servant quickly said, "A few workers we sent to build the infrastructure of the city were killed. Their bodies were decapitated and dumped near the city gate." "Who did it?" Sullen's voice was like the cold wind from the icy plains, freezing people. The servant gulped. "We suspect that it was done by the gangs in the slums." "Gangs? How dare they kill my people?" Sullen's face was cold, and his eyes were filled with anger. "I heard that it was because of the workers' salaries." "Those workers didn't pay their salaries?" Sullen's face turned even uglier. "No, that's not it. The workers' salaries weren't delayed. It was those gangsters who wanted to forcibly take away the workers' salaries. As a result, our staff went to reason with them." You're tuning into the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.